Hello, everybody. We're back. No nets, no filters. We're just going to shoot and then we're going to post. So, my lovely wife is going to read the questions to me, and then I'm going to get into a story about Butch and Little D from Berdoo. So, let's start in with the questions. First
John
question.
John Ralston writes, when Barry Tarlow died in 2021, did you attend the funeral or send flowers?
I was in Spain at the time. I'm not quite sure. That question almost seems passive aggressive to me, but you know, I'll let you comment if you want to write me back on that. I was in constant, you know, communication with Barry on and off, from 1986 on when I retained him for that make believe murder that the feds tried to frame me with. I was talking to Barry on and off. When I was in Spain, I was conversing with Robert Sheehan and Mark Haney, two partners of Barry's over the years. So, I owed my freedom to Barry. That 1986-87 case held a life sentence on it, and he got me out of it. So, yeah, I have total respect for Barry and wished him well on his travel.
Danny Lujan writes, did you know Moose out of Oakland?
Well, I knew a moose out of Los Angeles, and hung around the Night Riders and the Angels and the Slaves. I can't remember his real name. I always knew him by Moose. I don't know if that's who you were referring to, but I think there was a Moose, maybe up in the Bay Area. But I didn't know him like I knew this particular individual, Moose. Moose was also a fisherman, and he would bring lobsters and crabs by the Ventura Clubhouse. Good guy, a uh, big guy. Anyways, next question.
Paul Silson, you were never around when the shit went down or when law enforcement made a move. Very suspicious, very. It's funny this guy wouldn't say this to your face, but
Well, look, I been to prison 3 times. I've been investigated for God, I don't know how many crimes that they think I was responsible or somehow influenced somebody. Had a murder trial in 1986. Uh, Went on that racketeering case in 2001, 2002, 59 counts. I lost track of how many search warrants. I quit counting at 50 search warrants of them coming into my house or being associated with my business practices. So, I don't know where you come off with this, but I'll tell you, I think that if you want some really deep insight into all the investigations and things I went through personally and my family went through over the years, you should ask your mom about it.
David Hinda writes, did you ever meet Frisco or L? Oh, I'm sorry. Did you ever meet with Frisco or Los Angeles LCN?
La Cosa Nostra. Yes, I mean during the Mongol War when the bomb went off at the Mongol funeral, Sam Sarantino had a short message for me. Really, George, at a funeral. I was in prison with Rosero Gambino, Mike Franchise, uh, and so many other guys. I forgot their names. They were kind of more minor players than like Sam Sarantino was the underboss. He was in prison with me in '86. Like I said, Gambino was in there. Michael Franchise, a lot of Jewish gangsters. You know, different mob guys from different areas. And when I know that cops raided my house once, and they got my Rolodex, and I've talked about this before, and I actually have the Rolodex in my archive somewhere. But the cops put the newspapers on to my Rolodex contents. I had a lot of LCN members and social clubs numbers from out of New York in my Rolodex, and the newspapers wanted to give me the opportunity to respond. Why do you have all these mafia guys in your Rolodex? And, my response to them was, well, I also have David Carradine, Mickey Rourke's, and Sean Penn's numbers, but that doesn't make me an actor. And thought it was one of my good little sound bites. But yeah, I interacted with those guys. I still see Michael. I saw him just last year. Uh, Continue to see other guys who I'm not going to mention their name, and you wouldn't recognize their names anyways, probably if I said it. But anyways, next question.
Spam fried mice. Do you have an issue with the booze fighters? You leave them out of the discussion.
No, I don't have an issue with the bruise fighters. Some of them may have an issue with me. I know that when Sonny put me out bad, my relationship with a couple of them, I guess I could use the term deteriorated a bit. But I don't have an issue with them. I don't have an issue with anybody until they have one with me. But I don't mention the booze fighters because they were certainly up there at Hollister, but that club disbanded shortly after that, and they didn't come active again. They kind of reestablished the whole club. I think it was in the '90s or late '90s or early 2000s. But on a personal level, no. I knew the Galloping Goose much better. I knew one of the participants at Hollister was Tom Noel. He was a Galloping Goose. So if I don't mention him, it's not intentional. But maybe since they don't talk about me anymore, on a subconscious level, I don't talk about them. I don't know.
Okay, Dan Garrison comments Sacramento Sheriff John Misterly was friends with the Attorney General Lynch. Constant harassment causes Sacramento Hells Angels to leave, forming the Nomads. This is probably leading you into a discussion.
Yeah, I think what he's referring to is last week I mentioned, we did that unclassified report. And, is the report available to the public? I don't know, if it is or if it isn't. There was a manual called the Epic Manual, and I had it, Sonny had it, Irish had it. That'll give you the time frame when it was relevant. And it was actually against the federal law to have it. And Epic, the Epic, I don't know what it stood for, but if you got caught with it, you'd be subject to a criminal penalty and incarceration. So I mentioned that unclassified report last week. A lot of you guys have asked me, come on, give us the details on it. And I'm not going to do that. If you can hunt it down and find it, it's out there. But I think he's referring to, I mentioned prior to that particular report that I discussed last week, Lynch came out with a report in '65. And, of course he was friends with the sheriff in Sacramento because that's the capital and that's where the attorney general was out of. And they really leaned on the Hells Angels and Mother Miles, took a group of guys down to the Richmond area and started the Nomads. And that wasn't the first Nomad charter. And, I write about that in my upcoming book. The first Nomad charter, if I remember, was Santa Cruz, and they went to Reno, and then Mother Miles reestablished them when he wanted to get out of Sac. But I think that's the reference. I hope it is. If not, write me. Now, if you guys want to cite specific things, use the last YouTube video in the comments, write what you want to know. That's what I go through. I don't go way, way, way back. So use the latest video or go to my email address. But you get more response from me if you use the YouTube comments to address a question with me. So now I want to get into the mid-'70s. And in the mid-'70s, two Berdoo Hells Angels got caught up in a case. Little D and Butch and other members were in this bar. I don't remember the name of the bar. Maybe never even had the name of the bar. But it's a confrontation. Little D shoots this guy, kills him. And, what I heard was, he went out the back door, jumped the fence, got the hell out of there. I don't know if Butch was still on the scene, but there's Lee Allen Frazier, known as Butch or Booger, gets arrested for the crime, and he gets identified as the shooter, and subsequently winds up doing 30 years, over 30 years in San Quentin. It might have been a death penalty case initially. There's an ironic twist there because Butch's mom, Barbara Graham, actually was executed in the gas chamber in San Quentin. A lot of people think she was wrongly executed. There's a woman out there, there's a movie out there called I Want to Live. It stars a older actress who's real popular in the 40s and 50s, Susan Hayward. And, if you want to get some background, they make a inference that she was wrongly executed. Barbara was a working girl. She was Butch's mom. I don't know what the relationship was like, but if you stop and think about this is some real outlaw shit. And Butch had a crisis of conscience, if you will. He knew he didn't do this, and everybody knew Little D did it, but the club decided not to have Little D come forward because, in all likelihood, the lawyers thought both of these guys would wind up going down for murder. So, the actual shooter, Little D, he gets away, he goes on the run. And that's how I met Little D. I met Little D along with Chico from Oakland. But you got to keep in mind at that time, Chico came down from Oakland. Los Angeles and Oakland were having a lot of problems. Chico and I seemed to hit it off. I always liked the guy. We seemed to hit it off. And what Chico was doing, he was going out to Berdoo and he was getting a location on Little D. He was part of the lifeline for Little D. We would take supplies up to Little D. He was hiding way high in the mountains of California. And I was cautious when I went with Chico up there. Like, old man John was afraid that Chico was going to take me up there and leave me because of the relationship of the two charters. But Little D was on the run. Things were going on. Chico and I took some supplies up there to him. I forget how many times we went up there, but the decision was made between them that Butch would ride the beat. That if Little D tried to confess and shift the blame, that they would both go down. So in the 90s, when Little D was dying from cancer, he did a dying declaration that he was in fact the actual shooter, gave some details, I don't know if he did a video brief or if it was written, but the judge just wouldn't buy it. He just said, no, I don't believe this. This has already been adjudicated and, Butch is responsible. Little D was dying. I mean, they didn't go after him. And Butch remained in jail until he himself came down with cancer, and he got a compassionate release, and he came home, and I think within a couple of years he had passed. Chico and I became pretty close, even though the two charges were at odds. Chico thought I was a stand-up guy, and I thought he was a stand-up guy, and like I said, we made a few trips up to the mountains, and it was subject to some controversy because nobody knew what was going to happen if Chico and I got into it out on the road. I believe if you can find a mid 70s Easy Rider, they did a spread on one of Chico's bikes. I think Chico's last name was Mangione or something, but in the Easy Rider spread, they identified him as Chico Minestrone was his last name. And it was a really slick bike, if I remember. And it's worth a look if you can hunt it down. But, Cisco, excuse me, I keep calling him Cisco. Chico, along with a lot of other members, got caught up in that web of lies with Tony Tate, that rat from the 80s, who still seems to rear his ugly head from time to time. He wound up, along with Kenny Owens, they seemed to target those two particular guys for their crank cooking. They thought these guys were both cookers. I went on 60 Minutes with Cisco, and they talked about how we were dominating the crank market at the time. But they both got sentenced to 40. Well, I think Chico got 40, and I think Kenny Owens got 41 years. They both did over 25 years, and then they came home. I saw both men when they came home. Uh, Chico seemed to take the time harder than Kenny Owens did. Uh, I went to see Chico, and seemed a little down in his spirits. It was kind of odd. He was dying of cancer as well. Uh, Spent a whole evening with Kenny Owens. Kenny Owens could not hang around the club, but he had a motorcycle shop across from the Oakland clubhouse. They couldn't deny him work, so I went in there and had him work on my bike for about 6-7 hours, where I got to catch up with him. He'd been gone all this time, and it's really a memorable evening for me. But both men ultimately succumbed to cancer. It's a sad story. Butch's story is sad as well. But a lot of people, I've heard people talk about this. The people that know about it, and they've condemned Little D, and they said, "What a piece of shit." He didn't come forward. Well, he didn't come forward because that's what the club wanted. Sometimes you had to do things that the club wanted you to do. Just like Moldy Marvin tried to take the rap for Russell Bay and him beat this guy to death, and the club wanted Moldy Marvin to take the heat and wanted to keep Russell on the street. And Marvin wasn't real happy about it, but he did what the club wanted. It's the same incidence here. When you get involved in an organization like that, sometimes the policies and the political atmosphere dictate certain things. And I don't want to get a bunch of hate mail to Little D. Little D did what the club wanted. I'm sure it was part of Butch's reasoning as well. There was no reason for both of them guys to ride the beef on this murder when they'd already been identifying Butch as the shooter. But anyways, that's just a little obscure information. I'm going to try to come up with some more stories. I got a lot of stories out there about a lot of different instances. I hope you enjoyed it. Keep the mail coming, even the hate mail. Keep it coming. I get a kick out of it. And if you can't get a hold of me, get a hold of your mom. She knows where I'm at. Talk to you later.